All right, so today we're going to be starting with CSS. And CSS is what you're going to be using to style your web page and make it look pretty and cool and colorful and all that jazz. So what is CSS? Cascading style sheets. So that's what CSS is. And what does it do? It styles stuff. It makes it stylish and cool and all that jazz. Okay. This is important. So there's different ways to do CSS, and from the HTML course, you got a little bit of experience with that, just seeing how you can add stuff into your text. And so the first type is inline. All right, so if we go ahead and first of all, I'm gonna tell you, you're usually not gonna use this. Usually you're gonna be doing external CSS. But I mean, there are, if you want to be lazy, you can do inline. I do it sometimes if I'm feeling lazy. And the reason being to do inline is if you're only making a change to just that one particular element that you're styling. So like just that one paragraph is the only thing you're ever going to want styled a certain way. You know, you could do inline. So like some text, if we want to style it, so do some inline styling. Style equal, yes, type apparently. Style equals color red. So when you're doing this, you need to first put, style in there so that it knows that what you're trying to do. And then in the quotes, whatever you're wanting to affect. So you're wanting to affect the color, and there's lots of different things you can do in CSS. I can't cover them all right now, but like one of them is color. And then you make sure you put your colon, not a semicolon, but a colon, the two dots, and then whatever you want it to be. So like we want it red, and then close it off with a semicolon, because if you do the semicolon, then you can do more stuff after it. It knows like, all right, there's more stuff that it wants to do. But anyway, so by doing that, save that, and then go to the page, and we got some red text. All right, so that is inline by throwing it right in the tag. The first tag that you're doing, and you can throw inline in anything. You could throw it in a paragraph, you could throw it in a div, you could throw it in a heading, you could throw it in whatever you're trying to affect. You could throw it into that. So that's inline styling. And now we're getting into embedded, and embedded you have to throw in your head. So yeah, so in your head you need to throw a style tag, and because your head, remember, that reads what it's going to be doing in the rest of the document before it even gets started with anything. And that's why it closes the head before it even starts the body. And with anything, opening and closing tag. All right. And so a couple different ways you can do this. Like, all right, if we want to affect all paragraphs, right now we've got it in a paragraph there, right? So and do the same thing, color, except this time, what color did we make it? Red. Let's make it blue. And let's get rid of this inline, because this inline is going to override this because of inheritance that we talked about in the previous videos. So we got to get rid of that. But now it's blue, and all paragraphs are going to be, their color is going to be blue, right? So create another paragraph. Some more text. But another way to do that, so is, all right, let's say we didn't want to affect everything, right? We're going to start talking about divs. We use divs all the time to edit stuff, or to affect, you know, specific parts of what we want to do. So let's create a div, and instead of this paragraph, and then let's call it class equals test text. We're just testing this out, right? So up here in the style, all you have to do is dot test text, and then you do your semicolon, or your not semi brackets, your little squiggly brackets, just like you would for anything else, right? And then we've got class test text. So now let's make it color, I don't know, let's do red. All right, so then, you know, anywhere where you throw, and so now that we're talking about classes, anywhere where you throw this class test text, it's going to make the color red. So if I just wanted to throw, you know, this class in this, then, you know, my big is red too, right? And it takes on all the you know, elements of, you know, that class. And another thing is, so let's create another div, and let's call it, so class, you can do class or you can do ID, and it really does like the same thing. But let's call it more tests. But when you do it as an ID, then you have to do a pound sign. It's not a hashtag. I don't care how old you are. It's a daggone pound sign or number sign. Either of those is acceptable. Hashtag is not acceptable. And then we'll do, so if you want to do ID, you do the pound sign or number sign, and then let's do pink. And where did I throw the ID? I think I put it in a div. Yeah, this one. So now we refresh this, and this, you know, here's more text, is pink. So that's a different way. So that's going to be your embedded. And so now let's go on to the one you're going to do the most, which is external CSS. So first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to throw this, you're going to have to create a CSS file where in your static folder. Why? Because we're always gonna add stuff to the static folder. Well, other than Python files, but we'll get to that later. Right? While you're dealing with CSS, and HTML. You're going to throw it in your static folder. And so what do? Just click create new file, and it's going to call it, I don't know, we'll call it my CSS dot, and here's the important part, dot CSS. That way it knows it's a CSS file, and it can read it that way. And when you create the file, it's going to create it as a CSS file. And anyway, so let's do, I don't know, let's create a class. I don't know, test stuff. What we're gonna do, let's do color. And this is a cool thing about doing it in a CSS file in Visual Studio Code. It like is giving me all these dang on options. So all right, let's do blue violet. That's cool. And it even shows you what the color looks like. So anyway, that's, you know, one advantage to doing it in a CSS file. All right, so first, all right, we created this class, but we're not referencing it anywhere. Remember, just period, and you know, do it as a period to reference it as a class. So let's go to our main.py, and then we'll create another div. I'm going to use divs all the time, so get used to creating divs. And the class is test stuff. Test. All right, but simply referencing it isn't enough. First, because this is in a totally different file, we are going to have to import that file. So just like it has right here in your head, section, add link, relationship equals style sheet. And H reference, just like you would for any link, like you would do with your, I think we talked about A tags and HTML. Anytime you're linking something and you need to reference where it is, you just do your H reference, and then it's in the static folder. So, and actually, since we're in, instead of just, I could just type it static slash my CSS dot CSS, or the better way, right click it or control click on a Mac, copy relative path, and see, it does the same thing for me. You don't have to do all that typing. And that is all you need to do. So then we come over here. And here's the test stuff class in that cool, whatever, purple, violet, or whatever thing I was talking about. So this is what you're going to use the most. Like, pretty much get it out of your head that you're going to be doing a whole bunch of inline or embedded. Like, you're going to do external style sheets, because that's just the better way. Because with your external style sheets, like, you can write classes in here and use them all across your whole web page. Like, you have to write one, like programming, write once, use a bunch of times. You're going to use that with definitions. You're going to do that with everything. Write once, use a whole bunch of times. So anyway, that's how you do that. So let's keep on moving along. and so I need to mention this, but like you can add all sorts of stuff, in here. So like you don't have to just do one thing. Like you can add all sorts of stuff. Background color equals, I don't know, brown, right? And it's gonna want me to disable cat. So the bad thing about browsers is they use cookies, and unless you empty your cache, it's not gonna show up. So and that's a good point to make. If you are editing your CSS and you're not seeing the change, it's probably because of you need to empty your cache. And depending on your browser, there's different ways to do it. Like with Google Chrome, you can empty it by going to settings and then privacy, security, clear browsing data, and that clears your cache and like all your other stuff. So then, clear data, boom, and then you go back to your page and refresh it, and it'll be done. With Safari here, you have to add the developer tab. Honestly, I don't even remember how I added the developer tab. Just Google how to add developer tab in Safari. And then you got empty cache. So it's probably, I don't know. You know what? Well, let me Google that for you. It's just so long ago since I did it, I don't remember. To do that, go to Preferences and click the Advanced tab and click on Develop, and I guess show JavaScript console. Whatever. Yeah, so just do that to add it to Safari. And just if you're using a different browser, just Google how to clear your cache for whatever browser you're using. Anyway, that looks horrible, so I'm gonna get rid of that brown background color. But yeah, you can add multiple things in that class, and it'll clear my cache, and it'll add all the different elements into that class. All right, so what's the next thing on Sololearn? CSS rules and selectors. So I've kind of covered some of this already just now, but like, all right, so when you're doing, regardless of what you're doing, if you're doing it in, well, not regardless, if you're doing embedded or if you're doing external, which is what you should be doing, then you're going to reference, first you're going to reference what you want to edit. So like if we want to edit all the, like I was talking about, all the H3s or all the paragraphs or all the whatever you're trying to edit, that's the first thing you're gonna be putting. Or if you're using divs, which you'll use a lot, the class name or ID name of that div. And then the next thing is what you want to edit, the property, and then the value, like what you want to make it. So that's we've kind of covered that, but there you go. What's this talking about? Type selector. Oh, again, we kind of already covered this. So yeah. Okay, now they're talking about divs and classes. So I've already covered that. So I'm not really gonna cover that again, but yeah, you can use IDs and classes to edit things. Descendant selectors. So this is just talking about, I think, overriding. Many deep as you need to go. Yeah. So like, okay. Or no, this is talking about getting more specific, right? So it's saying, all right, we need to edit. So we've got the class, div intro right here. So edit that, and which part of it, or sorry, the ID intro right here, and then edit, dot first. So dot first is of course referring to the class, and then which part of it? Let's only edit the EM part, right? And we want to do that, to do that. So that it basically is just specifying where, because like if you just said, first, to edit the first, right? It's going to edit all, if we didn't have that EM, and we didn't have the intro there, it would edit all of, the firsts, right? So this is just talking about how to specify more succinctly, like instead of adding a ID to this EM and making it its own thing, right? Like and its own thing to add to the style sheet. It's just saying like, all right, you can say, I want to reference the intro one, and then the class, class for class first. So not both paragraphs. So in this section, the EM. Hope that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense to you, just message me and I'll explain it more clearly. So it's just specifying what to do. But like I said, another way you can do it is in that EM, create its own ID, and then type that up and then just reference that. So yeah. CSS comments. So just like with HTML, how we, added the like little comments so what's going on there. Basically the code just ignores it, right? So if we add comment and then do dig on that, it's just going to ignore this, but it's like something you can say, like, I don't know, making page blue violet. I don't know. Well, it's not the text blue violet. It's just like your notes, so you know what you were doing and why you were doing it there and whatnot. If you don't use comments, that's fine for CSS. But yeah, it'll just ignore it. But again, it really gets good when you get to back end code, adding comments so people don't have to like try and figure it out, because that's more complicated than figuring out why you're doing CSS. But it is a good practice to use comments, so I'm not going to discourage you from it. So okay. So all right, so this is talking about inheritance, and just like I was talking about before, this really isn't getting into it, but Okay. I'm just going to demonstrate it, right? Okay, so we made, test stuff color blue, violet, right? So if we go to this, and all right, like right now it's this blue violet, right? But let's say we go ahead and go into test stuff. So like right now, the whole thing is this blue violet thing, right? But let's say we make, let's break this up and add a paragraph here, right? All right, so for now, it's still all going to be hold on. Oh, because I set paragraphs. Okay, so actually that does give the example. So this is overriding that test stuff because it is one, in its embedded, and two, in its the paragraph is a closer element than the div is, right? So it's closer to the paragraph, so it's going to do that, right? But all right, let's say instead of making a paragraph, we just make it a div. All right. So now they're both that color, right? But if in that div, okay, in that div, if we added, oops, red, it's going to override, even though it's being told by this, okay, make that whole thing blue violet. Well, okay, it did until it got overrid by a closer element. So it inherits it unless the closer element, overrides it. So that's what they're talking about. And with inheritance, how like it just, whatever the last one specified is what it's gonna go to. So okay, and then the next thing is just the quiz. So that is all you. And unless you get stuck on the quiz, then I'm happy to help explain it. But first, try it yourself. I'm not going to just give away any answers. And their quizzes, they do like to ask like tricky questions. Not usually in the beginning, but like later, they like to like combine a bunch of stuff and like try and trip you up to make sure you like fully understand it, and like ask trick questions and stuff. It's kind of a pain. So I'm happy to help if you really get stuck and can't move past it, but do try it yourself first. Well, that's all I've got for today. Tomorrow we'll go on to working with text. Let me know if you have any questions. As always, email me, text me, jump on the Zoom at our Zoom times, or comment on the video, whatever, and I'll help you out. Have a good one.